The moment you press play, everything changes, because this is not just a story, this is a storm you were never meant to witness, and yet here you are watching every second unfold, wondering how something so beautiful could spiral into something so chaotic. Stay till the end, because what really happened between Kim Taehyung and Jennie Kim will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about love, fame, and secrets. It started like a whisper, the kind that slips through crowded rooms and hides behind soft glances, a rumor too delicate to hold, yet too powerful to ignore. Fans noticed it first, a look here, a moment there, an energy that did not belong to coincidence. It felt like a scene pulled straight out of a kdrama, where two worlds collide quietly, dangerously, irresistibly. Picture this, a dimly lit evening in a city that never truly sleeps, cameras flashing from every angle, yet somehow in the middle of all the noise there they were, not together, not officially, but close enough to make hearts race, and timelines explode. The internet caught fire, speculation spread like wildfire, and suddenly everyone had a theory, but no one had the truth. What made it even more intense was the silence. No confirmations, no denials, just that heavy, mysterious quiet that only made everything louder. Every move they made, every post, every disappearance became a clue. Fans turned into detectives, piecing together moments like fragments of a puzzle that refused to stay hidden. And then came the turning point, the moment everything shifted from quiet curiosity to full-blown chaos. Images surfaced, not clear enough to confirm, yet too real to dismiss. Shadows, silhouettes, stolen seconds that hinted at something deeper, something real, something that was never meant to be seen. The world reacted instantly. Some celebrated, others questioned, and many simply could not believe it. Because this was not just any rumored relationship, this was two global icons from two of the biggest forces in music crossing paths in a way that felt almost forbidden. The stakes were higher, the pressure was heavier, and the expectations were suffocating. Every step they took was watched, analyzed, and judged. But behind all the noise, imagine what it must have felt like, two people trying to hold onto something fragile, while the entire world tried to pull it apart. Stolen moments became rare, conversations became cautious, and emotions became guarded. The more people talked, the harder it became to simply exist. Then came the tension, not loud, not explosive, but slow and consuming, the kind that builds in silence. Fans noticed the distance, the subtle changes, the absence of those tiny hints that once fueled the rumors. What once felt like a secret love story now felt like a fragile connection struggling to survive under impossible weight. And just when it seemed like things might settle, the chaos returned, stronger, louder, and impossible to ignore. New claims surfaced, old moments resurfaced, and suddenly the story was no longer about romance. It became about pressure, expectations, and the harsh reality of living under constant scrutiny. What makes this story unforgettable is not just the possibility of love, but the reality of what happens when that love exists in a world that refuses to let it breathe. Every glance becomes a headline, every silence becomes a statement, and every choice becomes a risk. You can almost picture the scene, two people standing on opposite sides of a spotlight, wanting to reach each other, but held back by everything around them: the music, the fame, the fans, the endless expectations. It is the kind of tension that feels cinematic, yet painfully real. And that is where the chaos truly lives, not in the rumors, not in the images, but in the invisible pressure that turns something simple into something complicated, something beautiful into something fragile, something private into something everyone feels entitled to own. So the question remains, was it ever real, or was it something created by moments and magnified by millions of eyes watching, waiting, hoping? Maybe the truth is somewhere in between, hidden in those fleeting seconds that only they truly understand. One thing is certain, this is the kind of story that does not fade easily. It lingers, it evolves, it leaves a mark, and whether you believe it or not, you felt it, you followed it, and you're still here trying to understand it. If this felt like a real-life K-drama unfolding before your eyes, then you already know this is only the beginning, because stories like this never truly, and they just transform into something even more unexpected. So stay close, stay curious, and keep watching, because the next twist might be closer than you think. Just when you thought the story had reached its breaking point, everything flipped, and what came next felt even more intense, more emotional, and far more unpredictable than anyone expected. So, if you are still here, get ready, because this part reveals the side no one was prepared for, and it changes everything you thought you understood about Kim Taehyung and Jennie Kim. The silence did not mean the end, it meant something deeper was happening behind the scenes, something hidden from cameras and far away from the noise of millions watching, because while the world believed the story was fading, something else was quietly unfolding, something more complicated than a simple ending. Imagine a late-night moment far from flashing lights, a place where the noise cannot reach, where emotions are no longer filtered or controlled, where two people finally confront everything that has been building for so long. No scripts, no expectations, just raw honesty, the kind that is rarely seen but always felt. This is where everything becomes real, not the rumors, not the headlines, but the emotions that were never meant to be shared with the world, questions that had no easy answers, choices that came with consequences, and a connection that refused to disappear even under pressure. But here is where the tension rises again, because sometimes feelings are not enough, especially when the world outside refuses to stay quiet. Every step forward came with a risk. Every moment together carried a weight that grew heavier with time, and the line between holding on and letting go became harder to see. Fans began noticing something different, not obvious, not loud, but subtle shifts in energy, appearances that felt distant, expressions that carried something unspoken. It was no longer about what was seen, it was about what was missing, and that absence spoke louder than anything before. Then came the unexpected twist, the kind that no one could predict, a sudden wave of new speculation, not about closeness, but about distance, about choices being made and paths slowly separating, not because the connection was gone, but because the pressure had become too much to carry. Picture the moment: two people standing at a crossroads, not because they want to be there, but because everything around them has led them to it. One path filled with uncertainty and resistance, the other filled with sacrifice and quiet acceptance, and neither one feels right. And that is where the chaos transforms. It is no longer loud and explosive, it becomes quiet and emotional, the kind that sits heavy and lingers long after everything else fades, the kind that does not need words to be understood. Yet even in that silence, something remains, something unresolved, something that refuses to fully disappear, because real connections do not simply vanish, they evolve, they change shape, they hide in memories, in music, in moments that only they recognize. And here is what makes this part even more powerful: the realization that not every story gets a perfect ending. Some stories exist to be felt, not finished. Some connections are meant to leave a mark rather than last forever. And sometimes the most unforgettable stories are the ones that remain incomplete. But do not get comfortable yet, because this is where everything shifts again. Just when it feels like the story is closing, it leaves behind something unexpected, a question, a possibility, a sense that maybe, just maybe, this is not the end at all. Because in a world where everything is watched, controlled, and analyzed, the most real moments are the ones that escape unnoticed, the ones that happen away from the spotlight, where no one is looking, where no one can turn them into headlines. So what if the real story is not what the world saw? What if the truth exists in those unseen moments, in quiet conversations, in choices that were never shared? What if everything we think we know is only a fraction of what actually happened? Now here is where you come in. If you have followed the story this far, then you already feel it, the tension, the emotion, the unanswered questions. So do not stop here, because part 3 takes a turn no one saw coming, and it might completely change the way you see the story. Forever stay with K-Drama Bliss, because the next chapter is where everything either falls apart or comes back together in a way that will leave you speechless.